I'm thrilled to have Pete Bombaci on Noise Cancel today. He's the founder and CEO of GenWell. It's a charitable organization tackling something that we can all relate to as humans, the need for face-to-face connection and loneliness. GenWell says that these things are a core pillar of health, just as important as eating well and being healthy. Pete, thank you so much for joining Noise Canceled. So why don't we start off with talking about GenWell? So for people new to GenWell, what problem are you trying to solve? And when did you realize loneliness was a serious health issue, not just a social one?
Well, Victoria, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and have this conversation with your audience and help, spread the message of what we've been trying to do for 9 years at GenWell. So GenWell is Canada's human connection movement, and our mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by educating, empowering, and catalyzing Canadians and people around the world about the importance of face-to-face social connection as a proactive step that we can all take for health, happiness, longevity, and for the betterment of society. We like to say that we're not two things. We're not a mental health campaign. We're a social health movement because we want to shift the conversation upstream to a positive, proactive, and inclusive approach to building better mental and physical and societal well-being. And we're also not anti-technology because it's obviously here to stay. But what we do want to help people understand is what aspects of technology are taking time away from our human interactions and how we can use technology better to create the social connections that help us thrive as human beings.
So that's an admirable purpose to have.
Well, thank you.
And it's funny as social creatures that we actually need to proactively address these things these days. But you started this 9 years ago and now, you're very close to it, but I'm sure you realize that now this is almost becoming trending implies that it's short-lived, but it's becoming more top of mind through the media, and it's something that people can relate to. Why were you so ahead of the curve 9 years ago? How did you see this coming?
The original inspiration was back in 2003 with the summer blackout, if you recall that,
Oh, yes, I
Victoria.
remember.
Yeah, so that day, and even this entire movement, I never launched it as a loneliness campaign. It wasn't to battle loneliness, it was to inspire human connection. And I think that is really the secret of what we have here, which is, we understand that there's a growing need for connection because of disconnection, because of longer work days, because of hyper-competitiveness, because of the separation of generations, because we have an aging population. There's so many things contributing to the disconnection that we feel in the world today. But in 2003, I saw what happened when we give people the permission and the opportunity to go do what they as human beings crave and desire. And that is when we gave people permission, when the power was turned out and all the distractions were taken away from us, we all connected, whether it was with our family around a dinner table, whether it was our neighbors across a fence, or what happened to me is I was on a street where all the neighbors had come together on a street, and I walked out on the street assuming that they all knew each other. And when I walked out to the street and I said, "Hey, I wish I lived on a street like this where everybody knows each other," they all looked at me and said, "We don't know each other." And I just thought it was such a crazy thought that it took somebody turning the power off to everybody for us actually to come out and talk to the people that we live beside, work beside, go to school beside. And so from that moment, I talked for over a decade with my friends and family to the point where they were, you know, painfully aware that I was passionate about how do we make this happen more often. And then in 2016, after a couple of conversations with my wife and my personal coach, they both said, "Look, if you don't do this, you will regret this for the rest of your life." So that was why I launched the website, and the whole movement in 2016 was to build a more connected Canada where everyone thrives.
Wow, I remember that day. I think I was working at National PR and we were able to cancel our meeting with our Amazon client. And I think I ended up meeting up with my friend. I think it was like one of the most exciting and connected nights, day one into night, and everybody was just on a different vibe. It's almost like we went into another portal that day. Anyway, sorry, I'm just
Victoria,
thinking about that
that
day.
That is exactly what I witnessed. I also had an elderly mom at the time, so I worked out at the airport. I lived up around Yonge and Lawrence, and I jumped on my bicycle and rode down Yonge Street. And what I saw is during times of crisis, we as a human species are incredible. We were handing out water, handing out ice cream. People were directing traffic, picking people up on street corners. People were carrying, helping older Canadians, older Torontonians help each other with bags and carrying things. It's like sometimes we just need to help people recognize that we don't need to wait for a crisis to do the good because most of us are just so busy and caught up. We need to give people the permission to do the thing that now we understand is actually what makes us happier and healthier than all the things that we've educated people on. And the power of human connection is exactly what we need to get people to better understand.
I think also too, and I want to get into sort of how that translates in the work that you do with communities and with organizations. But I think there's something very addictive about technology. And I mean, I do have ADHD, so I think I'm sort of programmed to be stuck in that. I don't know, stuck to it. I have to make myself get away. But even if you don't have something that makes you a little bit different, it's highly, highly addictive, and it tells us that we need to be there, and then the notifications make us stick to it more. So, like, how are you tearing people away from their screens?
Well, I think what I will say is that for the last 20 years, we've told people to put the phone down. And I would suggest that that's been an absolute failure because what we need to understand is that we are up against teams of behavioral scientists whose sole purpose is to study the human condition and find the ways to build that addiction that you just referenced. So, what I think we need to start recognizing is that the solution to overcoming our digital struggles are not one where we as individuals are the solution, but one where, as a society, we recognize that if I call you up, Victoria, and I say, "Hey, Victoria, do you want to go for coffee?" And more often than not, whenever anybody reaches out to somebody that they're friends or they're connected with, it's like, absolutely, I'd love to go for coffee because we as a social species, we crave human interaction. But because we're so distracted by this thing, most of us aren't making those connections happen. This is why we created the 6 campaigns, including Digital Detox Day on the first of every month,
Oh,
to
wow.
give people yeah, it's an excuse, a reminder, and permission to say, look, you can't fight this alone. But maybe if I could actually reach out to you and say, do you want to go spend some time together? What I find happens, Victoria, is when I'm in a conversation with a friend, I'm not thinking about my phone. I'm not even looking at my phone because I'm engaged like we're right now. We're having an amazing conversation. I'm not looking at my phone. The way to overcome the addiction is to spend time with other people. We got to stop fighting the phone and start embracing each other as a societal approach to addressing the digital disconnection that we all experience.
But then there's this hyper competitiveness. Is that true that we are way more competitive than we have been? And that is part of the problem of loneliness and isolation?
Well, first off, for the last 50, 60 years, we've lived in the most hyper competitive, capitalistic, consumerist society in history. So, first off, from the minute I graduated from high school, I was told that I needed more status, more money, bigger car, bigger house. And that's how we judged our success in a fast growing, greatest growth era in the history of the world. That's how we started to judge each other. Then in 2012, as Jonathan Haidt would identify in his book called The Anxious Generation, Meta bought Instagram and turned Instagram from a creative platform into a competitive platform where all we post are our human highlight reels so that when you and I were kids, we probably went home at the end of the school day. And if we didn't pick up the phone to call a friend, we didn't know what anybody else was doing. But today, when I can watch people's human highlight reel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's the hyper competitiveness that we're really speaking about,
Okay.
which is you need to disconnect from this so that you're not always looking at, oh my God, Victoria's traveling in Australia and Jimmy's in Italy and Steve is somewhere else. And, you know, People are always going to be doing more than you, especially if you're sitting on your couch at home and scrolling passively through here. So the key is find the things that you love to do and stop watching what everybody else is doing, including going out and having a coffee or going for lunch or going for a hike with a friend so that you get rooted in the reality of today and the reality of what life really like, not what people are showing you on this thing.
I know, but it's addictive. How does the
Um,
work that you do at GenWell translate into reality? You offer some different programs for organizations and community and corporate. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, so the starting point, and this comes from one of our scientific advisors, Dr. Quam McKenzie, who's the head of psychiatry at CAMH in Toronto. He's also the CEO of the Wellesley Institute. In 2017, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. McKenzie, and he said, Pete, you're going to be very successful with this movement, but you need to understand one thing. And I said, what was that? And he said, people don't understand what you're talking about. And so, Victoria, the important thing for us all to recognize is that we've educated people for 50 years that they should exercise, that they should eat well, that they should sleep 8 hours, that they should get 8 glasses of water, that they shouldn't drink too much, and that they shouldn't smoke. The research now tells us that our social connections have a greater impact on our happiness, our health, our longevity, and on society than all the things that we've talked people to this point. Now, those things are still important. So let's not stop exercising and eating well and all those things. But what we now need to understand is that our social connections have a greater impact. So if we don't know this, the starting point for everything, and it's built into our social health framework that we do everything, which is rooted in behavior change, is that we need to educate people on this information.
Into reality with the programming that you offer.
Yeah, so ultimately, what we understand at GenWell is that this is all about behavior change. And behavior change has to start with understanding or knowledge. And so we do social health workshops. We do them in workplaces, classrooms, communities. We're now working with municipalities, helping people understand just why this is so related to not only individual mental and physical well being, but also to societal well being with things like addiction, homelessness, food insecurity, incivility, disinformation. When we understand the power of human connection, we recognize it's related to almost every downstream crisis that we face as a society. But because people haven't been educated, we don't see the connection that this is what we need to do more of as a society.
It's probably a relief to some people to hear that there's a lot of merit to social connection because it probably makes them realize, oh my gosh, this is why I feel so down. This is why I don't feel great. And it makes them realize, wow, it is important. I've been putting it off in favor of working or in favor of getting things done. And I need to do this. Otherwise, I can't show up to my kids, to anybody. So
Uh,
I think you do you find that people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize they must
Honestly, Victor
yeah.
honestly, Victoria, this is what we get after every workshop. We get nonstop thank yous for helping me better understand human connection. Even when I say when I launched this, I didn't know how important social connection was. I just knew that I wanted to do more of it because it made me happy when I was with my friends or family or whoever it might be. But as I started to go deeper and deeper into the research, I started to realize, oh my gosh, this is actually the most important thing for our health and happiness. And nobody ever told me. I didn't. And the other thing I will say, Victoria, is that I don't believe society understands what loneliness is. People think it's a crisis, they think it's a mental health issue. Being lonely is no different than being thirsty or hungry. When we recognize that it's a natural human emotion and that each of us, just by calling up a friend or talking to a neighbor, or maybe even talking to a stranger, might be able to address that short term feeling of loneliness, what we're all trying to prevent is chronic or persistent loneliness. And that's what's related to heart disease, anxiety, depression, dementia, diabetes, addiction, suicide, cancer. And so, because we don't know this information, many of us have dismissed this as a nice to have or a soft skill instead of leaning into it and going, oh my gosh, I can solve this by myself by prioritizing it each and every day.
It's almost like you wanna be you where stress is, because now people understand how stress is impactful on your health and what it causes, inflammation, and now people need to start to understand about loneliness and isolation. So in terms of an organization, if they wanted to get involved with you, like, would they have you come in and work with them to show them how to set up different workshops with their staff? Could they partner with you to help spread the word? How does that look like?
I love that question. So first off, we do workshops. So we come into workplaces and we conduct workshops to make sure that everybody understands what it is we're talking about. And then with our 6 campaigns, workplaces can actually activate around those campaigns, whether it's focused on young people so that the people in the workplace could prioritize the relationships with maybe their kids for the month of February, or it's on GenWell weekend, the organization could have a barbecue and bring people during seasonal transition when people can struggle. So everything we do and all our campaigns are free to every Canadian. We just want to help be the excuse that gives people permission to reach out and build the connections that make them happier and healthier.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about the social connections standards that you were working on with Dr. Steve Jordan's?
Yeah, the Canadian Social Connection Guidelines, Dr. Jordan was led by Dr. Simon Fraser University, included over 100 researchers from around the globe who all led to the first ever set of social connection guidelines around the globe. The World Health Organization will be launching a set of global guidelines at the end of 2026, but no different. Canada led the world in 1942 with eating guidelines. In 1971, they launched physical activity guidelines. And once again, Canada is leading the world with social connection guidelines. Coming out of that research, there's 6 guidelines for individuals and there's 6 guidelines for community. And like many guidelines, similar to the food guidelines, which are updated every couple of years, these guidelines are really just helping people be more conscious and intentional that they need to build stronger connections in their life. For some people, they might be starting with no connection and they need to do a little bit more. And for people that might be a little more connected, they need to increase that connection as well. And for those that are active in connection, maybe part of what they can do is recognize the purpose that they can have by inviting other people into their circle of connection. Maybe somebody who's going through a divorce or job loss or getting through some illness or an injury or an accident. And really, what we need to understand is people can experience loneliness for a million different reasons. And that should not be something that we fear or shy away from. It's something that we can all be part of the solution because we're all susceptible to feeling that way. And we're all able to help ourselves and other people overcome those feelings.
So essentially, social connection is a matter of public health.
Absolutely. It is everybody's responsibility to be part of the solution because we're all susceptible to feeling lonely. I lost my dad as a kid and I never felt like I was similar to my other friends because I didn't have a father. I've lost jobs. I've been divorced. I last Christmas I was sick for 6 weeks and didn't have the energy to leave the house. Whenever we disrupt the natural social bonds that we have in our life, that can create that feeling of disconnection or loneliness. So, what we need to do is normalize loneliness so that everybody recognizes, oh my God, we're all going to feel this way at times in our lives. And so, if we're all susceptible to it, and yet we recognize the way I talk to you might change your day or maybe even your life, that we recognize how we talk
Maybe.
to each other every day could make a significant difference to the person we connect with.
I did want to ask you sort of a holiday-ish question. For a lot of us, this is a joyous time, and for a lot of us, it's a very nostalgic holiday, and it can drum up a lot of sad memories. And here,
I think it's a really challenging question, Victoria. So first off, to those, and we were just talking about it a little bit, to those that are socially active, maybe they could do a little extra pause to think about people in their life that might be going through a struggle right now. Maybe it's somebody that they haven't seen in a long time. Maybe it's somebody who has lost a job or feeling, maybe they got challenges with their kids. There's many reasons why people can feel that sense of
Mhm,
disconnection.
mhm.
How often do we outreach? Certainly once or twice might be good. The third time, and maybe we don't use text. Maybe we actually pick up the phone and try to phone
That's a
them
good
instead of
point.
trying to text. So anything where we can build that connection. And for those who don't feel like talking to a friend, maybe there's the Friendly Calls program from the Canadian Red Cross, which is available to every Canadian. There's obviously hotlines for people if are in crisis, whether it's Kids Help Phone or other programs. But at the end of the day, there's lots of activities happening out there. Could be just going and sitting in a coffee shop and watching the people around you be socially connected. And hopefully, somebody who understands what we're talking about might say hello to you and start up a conversation while you're sitting in the coffee shop.
Do you have any data on the power of relationships when it comes to building trust and business?
Well, there is a study out of Harvard that says that a face to face interaction is 34 times more likely to drive an outcome than an email. So to your point, we can sit here and send emails, and even, from an emotional standpoint, there's a study out of Montreal at the end of the global pandemic that says a face-to-face interaction has 9 times the brain activity as an online digital connection. So whether
Wow.
it's about driving an outcome and a result or a sale, or whether it's just about feeling connected, when we do it face to face, we're always going to see a positive benefit from versus the other ways in which we communicate with people. I want to encourage everybody to head over to genwell.ca, find out about all of our campaigns, find out about our programs. If you want to book us to come in and speak to your workplace or your community or whatever it is, we are just happy to spread this message everywhere we can. And then just to your question about digital detox days, what we do is every first of every month we give 3 tips on how people can steal back some of the time and put it to more human interactions. They can follow us on our social media platforms and find out about those tips every month. And we will be developing digital detox days as we move forward because they're only becoming more challenging for us to disconnect from, as you pointed out earlier, Victoria. So we realize that, putting down the phone is step one, and then we can build the human connection. So if we can help people put the phone down a little more often, excuse me, then maybe we can help build a more connected world where everyone thrives.
Well, I'm excited to follow GenWell and follow you. This has been a very inspiring conversation. And note to self, I do need to get off my phone. So thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to share our message.
A topic to get into. Thanks. Bye bye.
Now.